What a week it's been for Eve Echoes. If you're watching this at launch, then I've actually put out 6 videos already this week for Eve Echoes, with a 7th one coming tomorrow morning, talking about how NetEase, the business, actually operates, because I've alluded to it a lot in previous videos, and I think it's worth sitting down and actually talking, kind of a know thy enemy kind of thing. More a case of try to understand why I say the things I say when I say that we are ultimately unable to do anything about this. That video will explain why, but still, 6 or 7 Eve Echoes videos in 1 week. That's pretty impressive, right? That's more than I've put out in the preceding month. Unfortunately, it's not exactly been good news, as I'm sure we're all aware. The last week has been controversial, to say the least, for Eve Echoes, with a new nanocore launching that, on one hand, because of how the statistics and merging works with it, looks genuinely set to break the game clean in half unless we have an astonishingly good balance patch, which history states would be unlikely, and on the other hand, the AI advertised part of it just, I think it would be modest to put it as, is not working as intended. Whether or not that works out as a development sink that the developers end up spending a lot more time trying to fix and thus pushing back meaningful projects. Remember, we've also got Titans set for the anniversary, and I can promise you one thing, they are not going to delay that because it's anniversary content. All this means is that anything that was going to happen between now and the Titans launching in August is going to ultimately be sidelined whilst they instead focus on fixing the AI nanocore, and to me that's just awful, but there we go. We do have a developer Q&A this week, as we do every week. I'm going to go through this with you guys, read the 4 questions and the 4 responses, add my own thoughts and opinions to this. Ultimately, I'm going to try and do this as unbiasedly as possible, because there has been so much negativity with Eve Echoes recently, and look, I'm not going to apologise for that. I genuinely believe that you guys deserve to hear that as the truth. I'm not trying to get people to jump off the ship, I'm merely trying to showcase where that ship is going. If you haven't been reading the signs, if you don't see the writing on the wall, this is the direction the ship is sailing in. If you are happy with that destination and the journey that it will be going on, then power to you. Genuinely, I'm unironically happy that people can still enjoy this game. I do think that these kind of business practices and the fact that people support it has led to the decline of gaming where we are now, but hey, that's not your fault. You as a player, if you're having fun, then good on you. That's why we play games, and that's why I want to cover games. As Otto Mechanic always says, and as I like to quote, ahoy there folks, I'm Captain Benzie, here's how I'm having fun, here's how you can too. That's what I want to do. But anyway, I'm going way off track here. Here is the developer Q&A for the 14th to the 20th of March 2023. And again, I am going to genuinely be as unbiased as possible on this. I'm not going to let the previous week get to me. We're going in with a clean slate, and fingers crossed there could be some interesting stuff here. I haven't read this yet, so let's jump in. Question 1. There is a lot of items in market, so it's very hard for new players to know how and from where to obtain those items. So, if every item has instructions of task and place to obtain that module in the item description, it'll be very helpful to them. And you know what? I kind of agree, and that's in inverted commas with an asterisk on the end. On one hand, yeah, I do think that there are a lot of items in game now, and they are kind of hidden all over the place. Like, how do you know how to get certain items of gear? And in fairness, there are also some items that just, you can't get anymore. In fact, some that you just have never been able to get, but they're still on the market. So I kind of agree that this kind of information should be readily available. I think that's an uncontroversial point there, that yeah, I do think new players should be able to see where they can earn this stuff, rather than just feeling like they have to get it off the market. But let's see what Lansdott says. This is very helpful for new players, and we will add a similar feature in future optimizations, but players probably will not see it in the short term because the items to be changed can be a lot, yeah, you've got to go through everything, and it's not a high priority. I understand that as well. After all, we'd prefer that the first thing new players learn is to buy items through the market. So rather than get people actually engaged in the gameplay, this is very telling, rather than get people engaged in the gameplay, you'd rather they just went to the market and tried to buy everything. And when they realise they don't have enough ISK for that and that the grind's going to take them ages, you're hoping that they're going to swipe for some Aurum to sell for some Plex? Is that where we're going here? Yeah, I know I said I'd give this a fair whack, but genuinely that's what that bit of the answer feels like. That's a great answer. up until that point. And I could be being mean here, that could just be the language barrier, and what Lance.'s saying is, look, you know, we feel that it's an important part that new players engage with a player-driven market, and I kind of agree. The trouble is, you're going to see that those costs on the market are prohibitive. Like, I remember how much I was earning ISK per hour when I was about Tech 7, Tech 8. In fact, I've got plenty of videos on exactly that topic. But I've just watched a couple of my friends here in the real world trying to go through EVE Echoes, and one of them hit Tech 6 and was looking to get himself a mower and upgrade it with some nice gear. And it was ludicrously expensive to go from Mark level gear up to anything higher than that, like prohibitively expensive. It was just insane, and I'm like, yeah, okay, so new players are not going to be able to properly engage with the market. Now, ultimately, I think what you could do here is an even better way than rather than add it to every item description, is use external tools. Or maybe even internal tools, and we'll explain that in a second. But like in EVE Online, you can type into Google, I'm looking for this item, where does it drop, sort of thing. Obviously, don't type that into Google, it's not going to come up with anything, but you can find out where this kind of stuff drops fairly easily because there's a lot of player-run content, and we do have a few wikis for EVE Echoes. I'd love to see those integrated into the game a bit more. Like, we've got the whole Hitchhiker's Guide to New Eden. Wouldn't it be awesome if that could hook to some external websites, like the Moby site, and people could go through and see where all of these items drop? Basically get the community to do the work for you, right? Does that make sense? Because we've got these external tools that are somewhat being curated. Get those people in, maybe, you know, just offer them like their monthly Plex paid for, which is basically what most of the content creator team gets anyway. So just support those people, and then you put a link in game that takes people to that website so they can look for the information. And yeah, it's twofold, because you're supporting them, they're supporting you. That, to me, would be a really, really like positive way of going forward with that. But I could be wrong. Let me know your thoughts and opinions in the comment section down below. When you are looking for information on where a particular item drops, where do you go for it? How do you find that information? Second point, will there be any changes to faction war games? Oh boy, spicy question. To make it easier to level up. I've been trying to level up for years and can't make it to the top level. Most of the players I'm teamed up with are terrible, which doesn't help. Please make it easier to increase ranking. There's no incentive to play faction war games mode if you continuously lose. Thanks. I would argue that there's a mindset to this one. And I'm going to be completely fair, and I'm going to come at this from both sides, but bear with me. On one hand, this is the kind of thing that is what causes people to drop off games like Dark Souls and Bloodborne and Elden Ring, because it's not fun if you continuously lose. And losing's just a data point. If you can get into the mindset that losing is just a data point, then EVE actually opens up a lot to you. If you lose a ship, if your ship is destroyed, that simply means the fit that you chose did not work for the situation you were in, or you were unable to fly said fit correctly in the situation you're in. And if you can analyze that situation, there is an awful lot of fun to be had from losing. I get messages from people all the time who say, look, I suck at PvP, but I absolutely love it. And that's kind of that mentality, and if you can get yourself into the understanding that losing a ship is just a data point, then that's a really positive way of approaching EVE in general, and just life in general, in fact, but especially EVE. Now, I think incentives to play faction war games mode if you continuously lose. What you're missing here, and the really, really stupid thing about this question, not the stupid thing about the player, but the stupid thing about the question. There are two teams, right? If you are constantly winning, that means the other side is constantly losing. So if they make it easier for you to climb, they're gonna inevitably be making it harder for someone else to. The only way to arguably do this is to make it so that losses are almost negligible and that wins help you climb ridiculously, at which point it's not really a ranking system anymore. It's just a how long can you slam your head against a brick wall until eventually you cross the finish line. And that's not fun. That's genuinely not fun. I would argue that rather than trying to make faction war games like more easy to rank up in, we should be looking at ways to actually engage players with faction war games so that you get better players on your team, and perhaps reduce the requirement for the top tier. And interestingly enough, I don't think the top tier does actually matter. Like being, I think it's Admiral, isn't it, or something like that? I don't think there's anything from the LP store that you get at the top tier that you don't get at, like, the one below it. So, like, genuinely, I'm gonna come across a little bit harsh here. If you don't have the skills to reach the top tier, that's not on the game, and it's not like you're losing anything meaningful by not being in the top rank. Like, I could sit here and complain that I'm not Apex Legend in Apex Legend, that I'm stuck in gold or diamond or whatever, but that's kind of on me, you know? But anyway, again, let's see what Lance says. It's kind of embarrassing, but this question needs to be answered. We're aware that they're embarrassing for who? We're aware that there are many problems with current faction war games. Matching, yes. Rewards, yes. Teamwork, definitely. The developers have proposed many optimizations, but there are not many actual changes to the system. The reason is that this gameplay currently serves a small number of people. This is very telling. And actually interesting that I've just got that video I mentioned earlier coming out tomorrow about how NetEase works. It's not the way you think it works. They basically have to ask for permission to put content in, they have to get a green light for things, and this is very telling here that essentially they've said, we want to fix this system, and the higher-ups have said, yeah, but it only serves a small number of people. Wouldn't it be more lucrative to serve a larger group? And yeah, they are absolutely right there. That's one of the problems with trying to, reason with NetEase at the moment. Even if the devs want to do something, it doesn't mean they necessarily can. Anyway, so it serves a small number of people. The goal of the system itself is not clear enough, and its association with the sovereignty gameplay is not close enough. Yeah, amen. It's almost like this should never have been instanced and should have taken a strong leaf out of the faction warfare system in EVE Online, where players actually engage with fighting each other, and currently, after the recent update, you're now actually able to change the security rating of stuff. You're actually also going to kind of be pushing the borders around based on how that goes. Like the Caldari-Galenti border might actually change. The Amarr-Minmatar borders may actually change as the Minmatar Republic pushes the Amarr back in certain places, and the Amarr Empire pushes the Minmatar back. And so, empires rise and fall, and systems come and go, and ow, I just kicked something on the floor. So, yeah, there's a lot that could have been done with this, and we did mention this back when it was first suggested, that it's a cool system as an arena, but that inherently limits it. I don't know, but we'll see. We're still thinking about how to make the goals of this gameplay clearer, so we have put its optimization on hold until we figure this out. We hope you can understand. That makes sense. They've got other stuff they need to figure out first, and this is a difficult question. It's something that really needs to be sat down with. And as much as I want to say, well, the community should come together and think about this, the trouble is, it's not that easy either, and I really don't want to come across as aggressive here. Like, I'm someone who works with and loves this community dearly, but when you work with the community, you have to accept that there are going to essentially be 3, maybe 4 groups. There are those who genuinely want the system to improve, the game to improve. I like to put myself in that camp. I will sit there and say that, look, I would prefer, personally, it work this way, but I can see why that's a bad thing. It should work this way so it helps more people, or it provides more interesting gameplay and interactions and things like that. I'm willing to sacrifice my own experience to help the wider thing. Like when it comes to talking about AFK interceptors, for example, I love the fact that I can autopilot straight to G2 and back and not have to worry about anything. But it's really bad for the game, and it's causing a lot of people to just not have the gameplay that they were promised when the game launched. So absolutely, I would give up that capability if it meant that something better was there for a wider group of people. The needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few, to quote Spock. But the simple point of this, the second group on that is then people who can't make that differentiation, and if it doesn't benefit them, then they're not sure how to proceed, and they're against anything that could possibly hurt them. Those are the people who sit there and go, oh no, I like the fact that I don't have to be online. I would probably quit the game if the AFK autopilot was taken out, and I don't care that there's a load of people who would be able to do hauling. Those people aren't me, so I would rather just keep things as it were, for example. Same people who've talked about ammunition as a bad thing because you have to remember to carry ammunition charges and stuff like that. But then there's the third group. And the third group is by far most insidious and the worst. The trolls. The people who just want to watch the world burn, and will tell you that the thing that EVE Echoes needs more than anything else right now is bunny ears that you can apply to your apocalypse. And I'm going to get comments in the comment section about that now, aren't I? But the point I'm getting at here is that working with the community is always going to be difficult and time-consuming in and of itself. And content like this deserves the effort. And that's why, we sit and talk to our communities as content creators and the moderators on Discord. We listen to what people are saying, we curate that evidence and collect together what we think is accurate and actually good feedback. I can sit there and say that, look, I think changing this system would be really good. These people agree with me and they say it's fantastic as an idea. These people disagree, and here's why. They're saying it would hurt their gameplay. You need to consider that because it is an important factor. It swings both ways. If this is going to hurt some people, you need to be comfortable with that, and you need to provide something that is going to help those people. Then I can also just not have included the whole bunny ears thing, and I'm just going to gloss over that and move on and just give the relevant information. That's what the community support managers are for in the Eve Echoes team. People like Cartley, Carrie, and M4A1. So reach out to them if you have ideas. That's their job to gather that information and to feed it back to the developers. Do use the suggestions channel on the official Discord as well. Genuinely, the developers do look at that, and if they can find something that will help faction war games and is actionable, more the better. Question number 3. Will there be any encounter and encounter reward rework? Yeah, no, not going to happen. Right now, normal encounters give only 3 to 8 million rewards. There's no reason people leave their safe pocket ratting to do these encounters. It simply doesn't worth it. Encounters ISK reward needs to be buffed. No, it doesn't. Too much risk, too little reward. If it'll be buffed, there'll be more risk, more reward, PvE players, and more PvE hunts. Again, we've had so much power creep in Eve Echoes. It is so easy to say these things need buffing, these things need more, we need more of this, more of that, and it's like, yeah, but now everything is just too big. Absolutely too big. High-sec encounters need to be nerfed, whether you reduce the amount of ISK that they directly give, or whether you widen up the islands so that people have to actually warp around and go to different encounters, which means they earn less ISK per hour because they have to warp between the encounters now. Those are my 2 preferred ways of reducing high-sec. Low-sec is already arguably one of the best ways of making ISK. The trouble is, it's also the highest risk by a massive margin. Now, that to me means that does low-sec need buffing? No, it doesn't. You need changes to how scanning and all of that works, and how these complexes work. If you could make it so that using activation gates, for example, which exist in Eve Echoes because we use them to get between rooms in Inquisitor and Scout anomalies, for example. In Eve Online, when you go to an encounter, chances are you warp to an activation gate that drops you at 0. If you are a sniper ship, you then need to move from 0 to wherever your position is. But it means if anyone's hunting you, they always warp in at the 0, which gives you plenty of opportunity to handle them. If you're in an Apocalypse Striker and you're sitting at 120 kilometers away from the warp-in point, and someone warps in whatever it is they're warping in, you can just shoot them. That's a genuine way of handling this. Not to make low-sec safer, but to make the gameplay more interesting and interactive. Low-sec is already pretty lucrative. I just think high-sec is too close to it when you consider that high-sec's also 100% safe. If low-sec is 120% of the rewards, but for an additional 200% risk, that's not an easy calculation for most people to make. And null-sec, null-sec's pretty safe for most people. Anyway, Lance.says, says, the current distribution of PvE earnings in high, low, and null-sec meets our expectations. Really? Really? Your data suggests that people are earning more in low-sec than high-sec, or is your expectation that no one's in low-sec? Because if your expectation is that no one's in low-sec, then yeah, you're spot on. So we will not adjust the existing encounter missions. However, we will have limited time encounter missions for our events. Data and player feedback from such events are closely monitored and will be used to improve future missions. Such a cop-out. Genuinely such a cop-out. That is absolute crap. You cannot honestly, as a developer, tell me that you are happy with high-sec being overcrowded, null-sec being almost entirely safe, and low-sec being just a ghost town. You can't tell me that's your vision for this game. But I get it. It's not an easy fix. It's not the kind of thing that you can fix without some complaints here and there. There are going to be pros and cons in any direction, but the simple fact is low sec absolutely sucks right now. Question number 4 then, will you consider adding charges for command bursts that increase one specific attribute like resistance or capacitor need reduction? Oh boy, it could add versatility, as in some cases having higher resistance and shield armor is more prevalent, while in other cases having bonuses to remote boosting and capacitor need reduction would be a better option. Thank you for your consideration. I kind of like the concept, but the examples are god awful. Like, genuinely, those examples are awful, because depending on which way you flick that, you can either push your resistances to such a ridiculous point that you're taking 0 damage from anything, or you can flip yourself into a position where your like reduction to shield booster and armor repairer just means you can cycle without having to even think about it. Bad examples. Lance says, honestly, the current resistances that ships can achieve are close to what we consider the safe boundary. I agree, start pushing that up any higher and it just becomes impossible to kill anything. Well, other than, you know, mixing a gold nanocore with a load of aggressive stats and getting like 114,000 DPS on a ship. But hey, in general, we will not add more resistance for a long time in the future. However, buffs such as capacitor need reduction will be taken into consideration. Yeah, that's fair. I think the capacitor need reduction, because you can still overcome, because it's still so many heals per second, it's just, in most cases, EHP per sec should be, you know, something that is on a limited timer, whereas in Echo's capacitor stability is pretty common anyway. Like, if you're asking for capacitor need reduction, there's part of me going like, what kind of fit are you using? Because you're probably already cap stable. Just remember, the fitting screen lies to you because it doesn't simulate. When it says you're cap stable or not cap stable, that's based on every single module running 24/7. And you do have to ask yourself, am I running every single module on this ship at the same time? The answer is usually no. So, especially like if you've got a micro warp drive active, you don't have that running 24/7 usually, so again, certain exceptions. But it means that the fit's going to tell you, no, you're not cap stable, whereas in practice you actually kind of are. I don't know. I like the concept of adding charges for things, especially if those charges are something that's going to be produced by industry fairly cheap, so that it's something that newer industrial players could make, for example. I don't know. It's probably just going to end up being fuel of some kind, though. But I do like the possibility of pushing your command burst module to do fewer actual buffs, but stronger. So like taking a shield command burst and pushing up one of the stats and down on one of the others. I think command bursts is probably the wrong place to put it. They're pretty good as it stands. I think that charges definitely are the kind of thing we should see more of. I would love to see batteries changed, that they have the standard like passive effect, but when you tap one, it has to consume a charge to give you that amount of gigajoule input into your capacitor. I'd love to see the same thing for shield boosters and shield extenders and armor plates, that the passive ability is there, but the active ability consumes a charge, because then we could actually buff those up a bit more and make those a bit more prevalent, on the understanding that you need to have charges. Something that takes up your cargo hold, which, again, the devs have kind of shown they don't really like to do, because certain players start screeching from the heavens that, oh no, that means I've got to carry something in my cargo hold and I can't just be an idiot and undock and forget about it. You actually have to pause for a second and go, did I bring the charges with me? Because that's such a difficult thing to do, right? Just go, did I bring the charge? Yeah, cool. I don't know. I'm kind of on both sides of that particular question. I think this is such a weird dev Q&A. It's such a weird dev Q&A. It definitely shows that they're really not actually thinking about new players that well. They're definitely not thinking about, like, how can we improve the game. It's more, what can we push forward with the game, which I really think is the wrong direction. But again, it's not the developer's choice at this point. You'll see in tomorrow's video. Anyway, folks, do let me know your thoughts and opinions on this one. I'm worried that I'm running a little bit long on this week's Dev Q&A because I've got a lot to say. But yeah, stay tuned to the channel, subscribe if you haven't already. There is a bonus video coming tomorrow morning, Saturday morning, 7 AM CAT, which is like, I don't know what time that is UTC. Just stay subscribed and you'll be notified. Anyway, folks, thank you for watching. Let me know your opinions in the comment section down below. Otherwise, happy sailing and see you in New Eden.